Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we dive in deep into the world of a flower that has captivated hearts for centuries. The rose. When you think of a rose, what comes to mind? Probably a perfect, long-stemmed red rose from a flower shop, right? Well, what if I told you that's just one face of a massive, incredibly diverse family? We're going on a journey from the most manicured gardens to the untamed wilderness to truly understand the many faces of Rosa. Let's start with the basics. All roses belong to the genus Rosa, which contains over 300 species and tens of thousands of cultivated varieties, or cultivars. These are broadly grouped into a few main categories. The first and perhaps most ancient are the species roses, also known as wild roses. These are the original, naturally occurring roses found across the Northern Hemisphere. Think of them as the ancestors of every rose you've ever seen. They typically have simple, five-petaled flowers and are incredibly tough and disease-resistant. A classic example is the dog, Rosa canina, with its delicate pink or white flowers, which you might spot scrambling through hedgerows in the countryside. Another is the vibrant Rosa rugosa from East Asia, known for its crinkly leaves, strong fragrance, and large tomato-like hips. These wild roses are the foundation, the genetic building blocks for everything that came after it. From these wild species, we move into the next major group, the old garden roses. This category includes all the rose types that existed before 1867. Why that specific year? That was the year the first hybrid tea rose, La France, was introduced, marking a major turning point in rose breeding. Old garden roses are celebrated for their incredible fragrance. Complex flower forms with many petals and bushy, shrubby growth. They often bloom just once a year in a spectacular, overwhelming flush of color and scent. Within this group, you'll find amazing classes like the Gallicas, which are some of the oldest cultivated roses, known for their deep crimson and purple shades. Then there are the Damasks, famous for being the primary source of rose oil for perfumes. And let's not forget the Albas, the white roses, cherished for their beautiful blue-green foliage and sweet scent. These are the romantic, historic roses you'd imagine in a classic cottage garden or a medieval castle courtyard. Then came the revolution of 1867, which brings us to our third and largest group, the modern roses. The introduction of La France. A cross between a hybrid perpetual and a tea rose changed everything. Modern roses were bred for specific traits that gardeners desired. Continuous blooming throughout the season, a wider range of colors including bright yellows and oranges, and the classic high-scented, pointed bud form that we associate with florists' roses. The most famous class within the modern roses is, without a doubt, the hybrid tea. This is your quintessential long-stemmed rose. They typically produce one large, perfectly formed flower per stem and are the stars of rose shows and bouquets. Think of iconic varieties like Peace or Mr. Lincoln. While their fragrance can sometimes be less intense than old garden roses, their elegance and repeat flowering habit make them incredibly popular. Another huge class of modern roses is the floribundas. As the name suggests, they produce flowers in abundant flora or large clusters. Instead of one flower per stem, you get a whole spray of blooms. This makes them fantastic for creating a massive impact of color in the garden landscape. They are generally hardier and more low maintenance than hybrid teas. If you want a constant show of color from spring until fall, floribundas like Iceberg or Julia Child are an excellent choice. And we can't talk about modern roses without mentioning grandifloras. This class is essentially a cross between hybrid teas and floribundas, trying to get the best of both worlds. They produce elegant, hybrid tea-style blooms, but present them in small clusters on long stems. Queen Elizabeth is the classic example and was the very first rose to be named a grandiflora, but the story doesn't end there. As gardens got smaller and lifestyles got busier, a new demand arose for even more low maintenance, compact roses. This led to the rise of shrub roses and landscape roses. These are modern hybrids that often incorporate the toughness and disease resistance of their wild ancestors. David Austin's English roses are a perfect example. He brilliantly crossed old garden roses with modern roses to create varieties that have the old-fashioned charm, fragrance, and cupped flower form, but with the repeat blooming ability and wider color palette of modern types. They are true game changers. Similarly, landscape roses, like the popular Knockout series, are bred to be workhorses. They are incredibly disease-resistant, bloom non-stop, and require very little care. You don't need to be an expert to grow them. You just plant them, and they perform beautifully, making them perfect for public spaces and home gardeners who want maximum beauty with minimum fuss. And what about those charming little roses you see in pots? Those are miniature roses. They are perfectly formed, scaled-down versions of their larger cousins with tiny leaves, stems, and flowers. They are great for container gardening, edging a border, or even growing indoors on a sunny windowsill. Don't let their size fool you. They are tough little plants that pack a big punch. Finally, no tour of the rose world would be complete without talking about climbing and rambling roses. These aren't a separate class in the same way, but rather a growth habit. Many different types of roses, from old garden roses to hybrid teas, have climbing sports or versions. Climbers typically have larger, stiffer canes and produce flowers all along their length. They are perfect for training up a trellis, an arbor, or against a wall. Ramblers, on the other hand, are usually more vigorous and flexible. They tend to have one spectacular, massive bloom period in early summer, covering entire structures in a cascade of smaller flowers. They re-watch UDUs to grow up into a large tree or over an old garden shed. So, from the simple five-petaled wild rose in a hedgerow to the exquisitely formed hybrid tea in a vase. And from the intoxicatingly fragrant damask to the tough as nails landscape rose, the family of Rosa is truly vast and varied. Each type has its own unique story, history, and purpose in our gardens and landscapes. The next time you see a rose, take a closer look. Is it a solitary, elegant bloom on a long stem? Is it part of a joyful cluster? Does it have a simple, open face or 100 swirling petals? You're not just looking at a flower. You're looking at a piece of botanical history, a living testament to nature's beauty and human ingenuity. Which type of rose is your favorite? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're growing in your garden. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey today. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about the fascinating world of plants, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. Happy gardening, and see you next time.